I just started an Airbnb. And for a while, it worked perfectly well. The first light bulb things like, oh, right, there's this thing called dynamic pricing. Oh my God, look at how cheap I've been for like 2 years or what. I went into a Facebook group and I said, who uses a dynamic pricing tool? If so, which one? And the most common answer from about 75-80% of people was, I didn't know they existed. The podcast, if you look at it in isolation, you might think, okay, we're not going to make masses of money out of that. But if you make it as part of the ecosystem and as a business development tool, it's been incredibly valuable. The brands that I was speaking to, very well-established brands, they're like, there's no way we could even consider that because we know we wouldn't get an ROI. We're interviewing industry experts. It's not like I'm going out and saying, hi guys, I'm the big expert, not at all, because
Welcome to Alex Nanny, the Real Women of Vacation Rentals. I'm Alex.
And I'm Annie.
And we're joined by James Varley, who is the founder and CEO of Host Planet. James, it's so good to see you today.
Real pleasure to be with you guys, two legends in the STR podcasting space. So yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
I always cringe when people say legends because it makes me feel old. Like I should be a lot older. But I know it's meant as a compliment. So thank you.
Legend is a term for any age over here in the UK.
Yeah,
he meant well. I know it.
Yeah, I know. No, I appreciate that. Well, James, you and I just met, so I know that I didn't know much about you. Alex had introduced us, through connections on LinkedIn, but I know maybe a lot of our audience doesn't know who you are and kind of your journey. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and leading up to Host Planet? We could talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So my background's all media related. I started out about 20 years ago working in newspapers. I've worked for magazines, radio, TV. And then for 10 years, from 2013 to 2023, I was managing corporate communications for the FIFA World Cup project in Qatar. So I worked for the local organising committee, was based out there in the Middle East. It was while I was living in Qatar, I started investing in property. Originally, I bought a buy-to-let, so like a long-term rental property in the UK. And then I switched to short-term rentals, partly because I went to San Francisco and stayed in an Airbnb for the first time and thought that was really cool. I should be doing this. But also because when I was traveling back from Qatar to the UK, I kind of got sick of staying with family all the time. I thought I need to have my own space. And especially after my daughter was born, we needed our own space. So yeah, I ended up buying a short-term rental, holiday let, as we call them in the UK. And I've now got a couple of holiday lets of two. And when I made that switch from long-term rentals to short-term rentals, I noticed this huge difference in the amount of education and information that was out there, particularly in the UK. In the long-term rental space, there are loads of websites, forums, podcasts. There are some really good multimedia information educational platforms out there. When I switched over to short-term rentals, it was kind of like, I don't know, it was like a barren landscape. There wasn't really anything. And what I found was a lot of hosts and property managers like me, especially the ones starting out, they would end up in Facebook groups where a lot of the advice and comments they would get would be quite variable. And there wasn't really a platform that was set up to really help people. So yeah, based on my own kind of frustrations, I thought maybe there's a bit of a gap in the market here to help hosts and property managers like me. And that's why when the World Cup finished at the end of December 2022, I started working on initially an ebook. It was called Holiday Cottage Handbook. That's what I called the platform to begin with. And yeah, I wrote an ebook about my own experience and based on my own research. And that kind of became the foundation for the entire platform. So yeah, the start of 2023 was me putting ideas together for this multimedia platform or what it would become. But yeah, it just started as me writing an ebook to help people. And I wasn't really sure where it was going to go at the start. I was thinking, well, maybe this will be a bit of a side hustle, or I'll put the ebook on Amazon for a few dollars. But yeah, that's how it started and how I ended up in the short-term rentals world.
I love that. I mean, your experience already being from, the media business obviously helped you quite a bit, I'm sure, and just in getting started and having those ideas. I mean, if you compare, Annie and I certainly have marketing and advertising backgrounds, but not specifically just AV in particular. So I know for us, when we first started the show, our biggest struggle was just, figuring out how we actually recorded this and how we got our mics to work. So we had to go over a bunch of hurdles that I'm sure you just sped right past all that part.
Well, you know what? I'd spent a bit of time like working in radio and TV, and I'd got used to editing. But this was literally 10 years before I started my own podcast. And I thought at first with the show, oh, I'll edit them myself. It'll be simple. I remember editing. I used to put clips together and video and audio all the time. And then I got myself in front of some editing software. I was like, I've completely forgotten what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
I realized it wasn't a good use of my time if I'm going to be like scratching my way through trying to edit stuff. So I quickly got myself an editor, and she's absolutely brilliant now and deals with so many podcast episodes and social media clips and does them a lot better and a lot quicker than I could. But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of my background, I think I had a little bit of short-term rental knowledge because I've got a couple of properties and kind of enough to know, I think, what hosts and property managers really want to learn. But my main knowledge is the media background, and that's what I think I could bring to the space is, creating content with really the audience at heart, and, creating a multimedia platform like we have now with Host Planet, where it's not just a podcast, it's not just a newsletter, it's trying to tick off all the different things and connect with a lot of different audiences. It's interesting when we look at the stats, how the audiences differ a little bit from, our YouTube audience as opposed to our podcast audience and like different social media channels. It's quite interesting to see they are kind of different and see where people are getting their content. But yeah, I definitely had a head start in the media stuff, but I think you've got to pick and choose the things where you can really focus on and add the most value, and then get the help where you need the most help. And yeah, definitely need help here and there.
Yeah, we quickly learned that we needed to acknowledge that we were the talent
Yeah,
and
not
not
the editor. Yeah.
not the people to do all the work, and we have somebody too. But I think the challenge is too, it's like you're doing something that is not a high generating revenue
Right.
plan. Like, I mean, it just doesn't it doesn't generate a lot of revenue, even if you break sponsors in, but it's like, so you got to like figure out how to like what's the best thing that you can like carve out and pay for versus what you can do yourself. But I think for you, the fact that you had that like media knowledge, you knew how to do some of the things and how to deploy it quicker than like some of other people that started out. They got a lot of learning to do, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think as well, like it helped with my network because at the start, especially, I relied on a lot of people for like design work, graphic design, web development, and they very kindly helped me. And there was a lot of mates rates in there to like help me get started. So that was really useful as well. But I think that with the podcast, the biggest value for me is the business development opportunities and getting the time with CEOs and co-founders of a lot of businesses, because the most valuable part for me is having that interview, spending maybe 30-40 minutes talking about them and their journey and their businesses, and then that 5 minutes at the end where I say, oh, I've got to keep you hanging around while the episode processes. That's when we have a chat and say, oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe we can collaborate. So the podcast, if you look at it in isolation, you might think, okay, well, that's, you're not going to make masses of money out of that. But if you make it as part of the ecosystem and as a business
Mhm.
development tool, it's been incredibly valuable in, making those connections. I mean, how often can you get 30 minutes, 40 minutes with, loads of different CEOs in the industry? It's incredibly valuable for that. And it's definitely been the biggest driver for our business. Like all our big sponsorship deals have been on the back of me interviewing the CEO or the co-founder, and then at the end of the episode saying, hey, let's work together. And then it's, yeah, that sounds good, I'll put you in touch with the marketing team, let's go. So yeah, it's been so valuable for that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
we've talked about that many times on the show, that it could echo the exact same thing, that there's just, one, not only how much we learn just from having incredible guests on the show, and we get to know them and get to hear from their perspective on their experiences, but yeah, to be able to, draw on their network. And I mean, it builds a nice bridge with somebody, that it's very organic, and you're not, cold calling them multiple times, but you're actually building that relationship. And really that's what it comes down to. It's relationship building. And Podcasts are a great vehicle for that. And I will say, actually, it's funny timing because I just had posted this yesterday on LinkedIn that we had this quote from Heather Monahan, who's an influencer, I guess you could say. She's an author. She does just incredible stuff for women in business, and somebody I've looked to for a long time for inspiration. And she had this quote basically about when you get started, you just have to put something out there. It doesn't have to be perfect, and I think that was the mentality that we had going into it also was let's put it out there. We'll continue to iterate and grow, and we'll tweak and see where it goes. But you got to get started, and the action is the strategy at the end of the day. I mean, you just have to take action and then trust that the next steps are going to fall in line the way that they should.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's easy to talk about something, isn't it? Actually doing it and taking action is the hard part. And yeah, I love that quote really, and that comment about just getting started and just doing it. And of course, like, yeah, you learn so much as you go along. I mean, I I knew from like very early on that we started out as being called Holiday Cottage Handbook, and I knew like straight away, I've got to change the name. This just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to a lot of people. This doesn't make sense, especially to people in America. So
Right.
I knew to change and rebrand and do all that stuff. But of course, yeah, it's every day is like a school day, in especially in the media. I look back at some things I might have wrote over the years, or it might be a press release or a story for a newspaper or a video report or a social media clip, and I'll look back and I'll think, oh my god, did I actually post that? Did I actually write that?
Yeah, we've
You
all
like
been
every
there.
single day you're learning new tips and tricks, and we take stuff like inspiration from other people as well. So yeah, it's all about like learning and growing, and yeah, developing something where you're going to provide as much value as possible to the audience. I think so long as you've always got the audience at the heart of what you're doing, then you can't go too far wrong.
So you started getting some properties and you got into the business. And so what I think is really interesting is I go back to when I started in vacation rentals and Alex started a few years after me, but we didn't have anybody to go to. There was no media out there to kind of help you navigate. So you were just learning on the fly and you didn't have anybody to share it with other than maybe some people in your market. And at that time, people were very protective about kind of what they were doing. They didn't want anybody else to see kind of behind the curtain because it was like their secret sauce and you didn't want to share because it was, so competitive. So what made you recognize that you were learning things that you could share and put value behind it within your media company or build the media company?
Yeah, I mean, I think with my journey, so I went to San Francisco, and it was part of a road trip up the west coast of the States. And I couldn't find a hotel room for under $300. And this was 10 years ago, for like under $300 a night. I thought, this is crazy. I've heard of this thing called Airbnb. Why don't I give it a try? So I had a look. I found this brilliant place near Golden Gate Park. The family there had like converted the basement, turned it into a little studio apartment, and I just thought, oh, this is great. And the host was brilliant, gave me loads of recommendations, restaurant recommendations, information on where to go. He's very kind, very helpful, and the price was about half the price of a hotel, and the whole experience was just fantastic. And I thought, God, I should be doing this. This is brilliant guest experience. So then I went back, worked on like investing in my own property, got a property. And because I'd had that experience on Airbnb, like a lot of people when they start, I'm not ashamed to say this at all, I just started on Airbnb, and that was it. And I didn't really understand or know anything about the rest of the industry, didn't really think about other OTAs. If you'd have asked me what an OTA was, I wouldn't have had a clue. If you'd have asked me what a PMS was, I wouldn't have known. If you'd have said direct bookings, I'd have been like, for what? All I knew was this Airbnb world, which Airbnb does an incredible job of, making hosts think that only Airbnb exists. And for a while, actually, it worked perfectly well. And, so many people have had the same things, haven't they? You go out on Airbnb and, you earn well. And this also was back in the day when, my mortgage was hardly anything. Energy bills were really low. And I wasn't that bothered about making much of a profit or scaling or anything like that. This was a property that I had while I lived in the Middle East. I just wanted it to pay the bills. And, so long as the mortgage was paid and the bills were paid, it's like, well, that's fine. And it's there for me to use whenever I want it. And that's, no problem. But then as a couple of years went on and I started to do more research and you find out what's going on, you start to hear about new tech, about dynamic pricing. That was probably the first thing for me. That was like the first light bulb thing. It's like, oh right, there's this thing called dynamic pricing. Right, if I try that, oh my god, look at how cheap I've been for like 2 years
Yeah.
or what it is. And I think that was the real light bulb, was like trying the dynamic pricing, realizing that I just didn't have a clue what I was doing. But it was still fine because the thing was paying its way. But with dynamic pricing, that was like the big light bulb where it's like, okay, there's a lot more to this industry than just Airbnb, and I need to find out more about it, and more people need to know as well, because I could see from Facebook groups people asking the same questions over and over again, and it was usually along the lines of, "Hi, I'm just starting out. Where do I list? Should I allow pets? Should I charge a cleaning fee? How much?" All these like basic things over and over again. And do you know what? When I started the platform, going back to the dynamic pricing, I went into a Facebook group and I said, who uses a dynamic pricing tool? If so, which one? And the most common answer from about 75-80% of people was, I didn't know they existed. So that for me was like, okay, I really need to build
Yeah.
this
Wow.
education platform to help people, because knowledge, I think, among a lot of hosts and property managers is on average really low. And I think some of us in the industry, we're the ones who go into conferences, we're kind of on top of things now, and we kind of see the same people over and over again. We know what's happening, but the vast majority of the industry is people maybe with one or a small number of properties. And I think like the knowledge is fairly low. So we're trying, like, you guys and platforms like mine, to kind of plug those gaps a little bit and to help people to have the knowledge of what's going on in the industry and to build successful and sustainable businesses.
Right, and I think the interesting thing too, though, that we see a lot is that there are these online forums, whether it's a Facebook group or places that people are asking these questions. And if you are somebody new and you ask, "What's the best blank for blank?" and five people say it's one tool, and that actually does not mean at all that that's the right tool for that person or for their market, right? So it's like you have a lot of people that have just kind of jumped on the bandwagon of a lot of the softwares that are out there because they've seen in these groups, oh, this is the best one for me. But it's the blind leading the blind. And there's not a whole lot of coaching there of like, this is what you should be taking into consideration. And like, these are all the options that you need to weigh and, choices that you have. So that's kind of the scary thing, I think. And that's where no amount of research is going to replace the experience that you have of actually doing it and really spending time with people that have done it to help you learn and grow. I think what you're doing is great because you are trying to help get people in the right direction by putting out this content, and hopefully they can make more educated decisions on things.
Yeah, 100. I think you hit the nail on the head there when you said that the blind leading the blind. And I think, you see a lot of that, especially in the Facebook groups and some of the forums. So I think, with a platform like ours, we're interviewing industry experts. It's not like I'm going out and saying, "Hi guys, I'm the big expert." Like, not at all, because I'm not. I've got a couple of properties, but I've got a platform that can help people. And if we interview experts and CEOs and founders and people who really, they've built massive businesses in the space, they're the stars of the show, and the ones that are going to share the knowledge that people need to get up to scratch.
Very cool. So you were talking about you do newsletters and you had in the beginning the cottage handbook. So did you create an actual handbook that you were promoting, or was this kind of a tagline that was all encompassing for everything that you were doing?
Yeah, so in the beginning, so the World Cup ended in December 2022, and I had 6 months remaining on my contract, but very little to do because the tournament had finished. So I started writing this ebook, and I called it Holiday Cottage Handbook. And when I started the business, that was the name of the platform, Holiday Cottage Handbook. We've just recently rebranded to Host Planet. But yeah, it was an ebook, and I wrote it, and it ended up being something like 65 pages. And when we launched the platform, which was in September 2023, we had our website, we had an ebook that people could download for free. We started the podcast series in September 2023, social media channels, blog posts, and all that kind of thing. When I was writing the ebook, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with it. For a while, I was working out kind of my next career move after the World Cup. So I thought, what am I going to do with this ebook? Am I going to turn this into a business? Am I just going to put this ebook on Amazon and sell it for $2 each. I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. And then as things kind of moved forward and we got closer to the middle of 2023, I was like, I think I can turn this into a business. I think I can turn this into a multimedia platform. And if I can develop an audience of short-term rental hosts and property managers and industry professionals, my feeling was that this could become a valuable audience to get in front of, that businesses in the space would want to leverage. So that's kind of got me thinking about how I can build a business and create that content. And then, how do I get to that space where it's a valuable resource? Well, basically I have to create a lot of high quality free content. That's kind of what I ended up on. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the ebook. Maybe I was going to charge a little bit for it or not, but I read a marketing book while I was in the planning stage for this, and one of the lines just stuck out at me like a sore thumb, and it was, make your content free and make it so good that people can't believe it's free. And I've tried to use that mantra for the whole platform since we started. So everything is free to the end user, including the events that we hosted. We hosted an event in November in London. We hosted an event earlier in April in London. They've been free to attend. We've even had free lunch, free sweets, free competition to enter, and all this kind of thing. So make the content free, make it high quality, and that's the best way to build an audience, I think, in the current media landscape that we have today. So everything started in September 2023. All the platforms went live then. I'd kind of thought, well, for the first 6 months or so, I don't really expect any traction in terms of sponsorship. The way that we monetize the platform is through sponsorship, and different collaborations. And I thought, well, I can give this 6 months, I can give this a year, and then at that point, I'll have to decide, is this actually turning into a business, or is it something that I need to have as a side hustle and go and do something else. But within the first month, we got our first sponsor. Then we got another sponsor in month 2. And I think within about 6 months, we had about 10, 15 sponsors. Eventually, we signed a deal with Hostfully. So Hostfully now sponsor one of our podcast series. We've recently done a big deal with Hospitable as well. And then we've been working with companies like Beyond and Guesty and various others as well. So it's been a really great journey in terms of the growth and getting people on board and growing the platform. But it all goes back to, trying to help hosts and property managers and through free content, make it free and make it so good people can't believe it's free. That's what we try. If some people have that thought where they think, wow, I've downloaded this ebook and I was expecting it to be one side of A4 and it's actually 65 pages, and they think, oh gosh, I can't believe I haven't paid for this, then that's the feeling we want people to have.
Yeah, I love that. We'll be back in just a minute, but first, a word from our premier brand sponsor, Homes and Villas by Marriott Bonvoy.
My name is Dylan Gibbs. I'm a director of revenue for East West Hospitality. What made Marriott Bonvoy an appealing partner for East West Hospitality, besides the team over there being fantastic to work with, they also have really strong brand recognition and customer loyalty. They're a top-notch hospitality brand, making memories for really millions of guests annually, and that really aligns well with our brand and our vision. As we are a luxury vacation rental management company, we're consistently seeking new distribution partners to get our properties in front of the right guests at the right rate at the right time. They provide exactly the opportunity to do that. We're seeing that Marriott provides for us ongoing support around curation, auditing, and optimization of our listings, which is a huge one. Besides describing it as a dream to work with their team, super responsive. They're definitely very reactive when we need them to be, but they're very proactive as well. Partnering with Marriott Bonvoy has been tremendously beneficial. They are a top producer as far as connected channels go, and the ability to utilize points to spend those points to book a luxury vacation home, that can't be overstated as a benefit of their platform. It is a huge benefit, both for the guest and for us. We have absolutely noticed a difference in the types of guests that HBMB brings to the table with how well-traveled the guests tend to be. They're very organized, very thoughtful in considering their accommodations. They have a little bit higher expectations, but that's absolutely what we bring to the table as well. Our homeowners have resoundingly been pleased with the partnership, really delivers significant value. A lot of the homeowners are also HBMB members. They travel a lot, so they know what HBMB is all about. Really, they've been very happy and with the level of care that the typical HBMB guest has for the property, treating our homeowners' homes like it's their own home. If a property manager is not currently using HBMB, if you're on the fence about signing onto the program, I would highly recommend doing it. You've already worked through all the due diligence and talking to the team. The Marriott partnership has been a huge success for us. Distribution, listing management, and hosting through the platform are all very easy and really give you access to fantastic clientele.
Ready to take your property management business to the next level? Go live with Homes and Villas by Marriott Bonvoy by August 4th, 2025, and receive Marriott Bonvoy Platinum status for 1 year, 36,000 bonus points, and a marketing feature on a Homes and Villas marketing channel after you launch. Click the link in the description to get started today. You've taken it to the next level that you've also launched in-person events. And unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to go over to the one that you just had over in London, but would love for you to tell us a little bit more about it and how it went. I've heard from some people that it was great. So excited to hear your take on it.
Yeah, it was really fantastic. We had, it was kind of like a boutique event. It was in a space in West London, very nice part of London, just behind the Ritz Hotel. It fits about, I think the venue said that the maximum is 110, but I think at one point we had about 120, 130 people there. We had some amazing guest speakers and exhibitors and sponsors. So there's space actually for 8 exhibitor spots in the room. So we had 4 either side. They were all filled. So we had Guesty were there, Evivo, Beyond, Hospitable, few others, kind of more UK brands. We also had some other brands who were involved as with speaking slots, so like Price Labs and Linkbase and Resi Central. And we got some like big property managers there involved in panel sessions. So we had like Andy Easton, who's from Cornwall. He's got 240 rentals. James Cornwell from Curated Property, I think they've got 75 in Bath and London. Emma Kelman from the Isle of Wight, they've got over 100 rentals. So yeah, it was lots of really knowledge-packed day, like really educational, and very focused. I think like I really like the boutique event format because everybody in the room is like focused on what's going on at that particular moment on time. There's no kind of like other rooms and other talks going on simultaneously. It's like we're either focused on the content or we're doing networking or we're having lunch or something. So yeah, it was really great, fantastic location, and we're looking forward to working on more events. We're actually in the planning stages now for putting a UK roadshow together, so going to different STR hotspots across the country. So yeah, hopefully we'll be making an announcement about that pretty soon. But yeah, it's great to do events and connect with the audience and try to provide that real value for both sides. I think that's one of the big challenges of running an event, really, is providing loads of value for the attendees, but also providing lots of value for the exhibitors and sponsors as well. I think it's a constant challenge in the STR world, but one we're trying to tackle.
So you mentioned you touched on real quickly, like there's differences between the U.S. market and the UK or the European market. Are you doing events or planning on doing events within the U.S. market?
I would love to do some events in the US. Yeah, it's funny. Like over the last week or so, I've been connecting with so many people in the industry. A few guys who are interested in doing events in Canada. Somebody else in Portugal, somebody else in Belgium. US is definitely a huge opportunity for us. It's our second biggest market right now in terms of newsletter subscribers and podcast listeners. And most of our biggest sponsors, Beyond, Hospitable, Hostfully, they're all based, big US brands. So yeah, we'd love to get over there and work some stuff out. I've had a good conversation this week with one of our big brand partners about maybe getting involved in the VRMA later this year. So we'll see what comes of that. Yeah, I need to get over there for a few big US events, 100%. And then, yeah, we'd love to do something in future. But to be honest with you, the feedback I got was a lot of people have had like big challenges in the US in terms of basically the cost really of putting together an event in North America compared to the cost in the UK. What our model that we're working towards is working with property management companies and working with other brands so that they can kind of take care of like venue costs and lunch and that kind of thing, and then leave us to focus on the agenda, getting the speakers there, getting the exhibitors and sponsors on board. So it's really a collaborative process that we're trying to go down in the UK, and that kind of cuts costs massively, like for us, because we don't have to worry about providing the venue. And then in turn, has a knock-on effect. We can cut the costs massively for the sponsors and exhibitors as well. So the idea being that I can go to sponsors and say, look, we're doing this roadshow of events in the UK, and this is going to be the cost. And probably the cost for getting involved in 6 events might be less than taking part in I'm sure it'll be less than taking part in for some events in the US and some even in Europe as well. So yeah, again, it goes back to like trying to deliver that value. But yeah, it's I'd love to work on something in the US, and well, maybe we can team up. Who knows?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the US is hard too because it's so spread out, whereas in Europe, it's not a problem to take a train to another country, whereas we don't have trains here, so it's not easy to get from state to state, and you're talking like, if you just in the state of Florida, I mean, it's 9 hours from or 10 hours from one corner to the other, so
Yeah.
it's not an easy thing when you think logistics on it. So yeah, we are expensive, we are spread out. It's a
Mhm.
challenge for sure.
Yeah, do you know the thing I heard actually was the just hiring a venue, because a few
Yeah.
people based in the States just said basically like any venue you want, you're looking at like $100,000. It doesn't matter where you are or like kind of how big your platform is. And like frankly for us as a business right now, it just wouldn't be feasible. And even like the brands that I was speaking to, very like well established brands, they're like, there's no way we could even consider that because we know we wouldn't get an ROI. And there's a few people who have organized events, and they just said, for what we got back in the end, even after charging a high ticket price and getting sponsors on board and everything, the net result actually just wasn't enough to justify carrying on. So yeah, some challenges there, but yeah, it'd be great to maybe work with different companies in the States and work out how we can try and overcome those challenges and deliver that value for all sides.
Yeah. And a lot of places too. I mean, you've got to book sometimes 2, 3 years in advance to get, a venue and start planning. So definitely hard to get that level of commitment that most people don't know if they're going to a conference even next week right now. So, I mean, 2 years from now, my God, that's impossible to get an attendee list at that point.
Yeah, and also the ticket prices as well. Like with our platform, I'm always really conscious that we try to make the content as broad as possible, so it's relevant to people whether they're starting the journey, whether they've got 1 or 2 properties, or whether they've got hundreds and they're scaling and they're a massive property management business. And then some events you look at what the ticket price is, and it might be $1,000 or $1,500. And I'm thinking, I put myself in the shoes of people starting out. I'm like, are they going to spend that much money on going to a
Right.
conference? It's like early in their
Yeah.
journey. So again, it goes back to that trying to deliver that value for both sides. And that's why, with our events, because of the venues and the locations, we don't have to pay $100,000 for a venue or anything crazy like that. We've had the opportunity to make it free and say to people, look, if you are just starting out, you want to learn more, then come along. You're welcome to be part of this, and we're not kind of excluding anybody depending on whether it's geography or the cost of the event or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the riches are in the niches in a lot of ways with conferences in our space. I mean, we've obviously seen DARM the Data and Revenue Management Conference has been very successful in the United States. So it's just focused on data, revenue management, marketing, that side of the business. It's not about operations, it's not about HR. And, the women's conference has been very successful. The hyper regional conferences have been very successful. And I think where some of the larger ones have struggled is when you're trying to satisfy what you just spoke of trying to have something for the whole gamut there. It's like you alienate people, or they feel like this isn't my crowd because there's too much of either the experienced people or too much of the inexperienced people. So it's like, to figure out the best way to do that. I don't know that anybody really has the perfect formula. I mean, I don't know that there even is one, to be honest, but I think that there's value in doing events together, or at least kind of like having one end or begin at the end of another one. So, I mean, if you're going to Phoenix, for example, that if there's already an event going on, you tag yours on to the end or to the beginning, that if somebody's there, it's like, well, why not? We've already flown all the way out here. And the event that you just had was kind of similar. And I don't know if that's how you decided when you were planning it, but it was kind of a three-peat there. It was the shorties on Wednesday night, and then Thursday was the STAA.
Yes, yeah, you have the shorties on Tuesday night, the short stay summit on the Wednesday, and then we had our event on the Friday. And yeah, to answer your question, yes, very much by design. So at the first event that we did in November, we did it close to Scale UK. And you've got a lot of international and US businesses come over for scale. Same thing with the short stay summit. And then for us, we can say, because we know where we are kind of in the ecosystem. We're just new to events. We go along to our partners, especially in the US, and say, look, we're doing an event, it's going to be next to Scale or it's going to be next to Short Stay Summit.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, well, that kind of makes sense because we're there anyway. We've already spent the money on flights and
Right.
accommodation. We're going to stay an extra day and we'll, pay a little bit extra to come to your event as well. So, yeah, I think, it's just like where we are in the chain right now. I wouldn't expect like loads of US companies to fly in for our event if we just like had something standalone. But hopefully we can get to that stage. But yeah, right now it's I guess like hanging off the coattails of the big boys at the moment.
Yeah.
So coming off the tail of this recent event, what's upcoming for you guys? Are you doing more this year? You mentioned potentially doing something at VRMA, but are you doing anything that you've already have planned over in your area?
Yeah, we've got we're just having discussions now about setting up another event towards the end of the year. Probably going to be October time, so we're just working on that. We're putting together, this has been an idea for a while, but a road show, a UK road show throughout 2026. So we're going to try and do stuff kind of like shoulder season over here. So there'll be probably 3 events at the start of the year, January, February, March, and then 3 events towards the end of the year. And we'll try and get across the country as well. We're going to be doing that in partnership with various different property management companies and brands. We're just kind of dotting the I's and crossing the T's right now, but planning to go to places like Cornwall, the south of England, near the Cotswolds area, around north of England, which is where I am, and also Scotland as well. And so tick off those like big short-term rental hotspots, and I think give people, hosts and property managers, not, or even though it's a much smaller country here, not everybody wants to travel to London or wants to take a week out of their schedule to attend a few events and all that kind of thing. If we can host something like on a day close to where people are within an hour or something, then they're much likely to come along. So I think it'd be a great opportunity to meet the audience further, and I think a great chance as well for the brands that we work with to really get out into the country, meet more people, meet more hosts and property managers, and hopefully grow their businesses as we grow our brand as well.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll see the same thing that we see here, that when you do these road shows, there's a lot of people, or market visits. You find so many people that they've never come to one of the main shows that you put on or that you go to, but because it is local to them, they think, okay, I'll go check it out. And that's great. I mean, like that's gold, being able to find those people and get them more involved, and just have a better pulse of what's going on in the industry. Because I think all of us can kind of operate in a little bit of a very much, not a little bit, of an echo chamber of what we think is really happening, because it's all the same people going to the same events and we're talking about the same things. But it's like, let's hear boots on the ground reality from these people of what really is the pace there. And like Andy said, it's definitely a lot easier for you guys with the train system. I mean, that's one thing that would be amazing if we had that over here, but makes travel certainly easier for y'all.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, a little bit easier to get around. Although some parts of the country, like getting down to Cornwall or like the West Country near the Cotswolds area, I'll be driving to those events. Like getting in and out of London for me is really simple. It's a couple of hours away. But getting to the southwest of the country is a bit of a challenge, so I'll have to drive. But it's a drive that you guys would call like round the corner, like 3 or 4 hours. I think you spend
that's not bad at all.
you spend about 3 or 4 hours going to the supermarket or something, don't you? So it's nothing.
Yeah. It is kind of
Oh, man.
it's an event. So you've got these events, you've got multimedia. Is there anything else that you feel like you haven't tapped into yet that you want to?
Definitely the States is a big target for us. In terms of like extra avenues for communication, I think a lot of companies in the space are concentrating on webinars and that kind of thing. That's something that we've thought of. I'd like to build an app, actually. I'd like to build an app for the business that can help us to connect us more closely with our audience. Also can help our partners and sponsors to connect with our audience as well. If we can send alerts about new podcast episodes, newsletters, blog posts, or even alerts saying, hey, have you seen this 30% discount for Housefully or Hospitable or whatever it is, I think that would be a great way to connect further with our audience. So yeah, we're keen to build an app, and we're having conversations about that now. So that's something hopefully which will be on the radar fairly soon. But yeah, app, events, and I think for us it's it's all about just getting more and more eyeballs on what we're doing. Like I said before, everything we do is free for hosts and property managers. So I would hope that people, if they're involved in this industry, they would take a look and follow the newsletter, listen to a few of the podcasts, because I'm sure if they're interested in STR, then they're going to get value from the content that we're sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're hoping that we will cross paths with you sometime either later this year or into next year. It could be fun maybe if we do some sort of collaboration for an in-person event over here, but we'll see where it goes. And just kind of, just like we said with the podcast, you got to put something out there and you figure it out. Right? Trust the signs.
Exactly.
But
Yeah. Trust the science. And let's it'd be great to host you guys on my podcast as well at some point. So we'll hopefully get that sorted out as well. And do a bit of cross collaboration.
yeah, absolutely. What's the best way for anybody to get in touch with you, James, if they want to reach out or learn more about Host Planet?
So you head to the website, which is hostplanet.club. You can email me, james@hostplanet.club, or find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on all the social media and stuff. So head along to the website and drop me a line.
Interesting. So, because I was trying to get to your website earlier, and when I put it in, it came up as hostplanet.com.au came up, but it wouldn't let me go on to it. So it's make sure everybody has it. It's hostplanet.club. I would not have known that. But
Yes, correct. Yeah, I did try. Do you know what? I got sent some messages today from my friend Louis Andrews, who I was at the retreat with, and Louis very interested in buying domain names. I don't know if you know Louis. He runs OVO
No.
Network over in France. He sent me a list of all these domain names that he's bought today to do with the new Universal Studios, which is opening in the UK in
Oh,
2021.
wow.
Yeah, announced that last week. So we're going to have the first Universal Studios in Europe. But anyway, so Louis was talking to me about the domain name, and he was saying, you need to get hostplanet.com. I said, well, I'd love to have hostplanet.com, but it was really ridiculous amount of money if I wanted to buy it.
yeah.
So he sent me a screen grab of how much it would be. I think it was something like, I think when I looked, it was like $30,000 or something crazy, and it's a little
Oh
bit
my
less than that.
goodness.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
Wow.
but that's why we went for club, because we're a club of hosts and property managers, and that's not going to hostplanet.club is not going to bankrupt me in the near future. So that's why we went for
Right. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you're
Smart
a
move.
community. So that makes sense. Well, if anybody wants to reach out to you, go to hostplanet.club. We got that. If anybody wants to get in touch with Annie and I, you can go to alexandanniepodcast.com. And thank you for tuning in, everybody.